Hey, what's up, guys, and welcome back to another episode of Cops Court and Community. I'm Darnell Leeson. So, what's one of the best ways to stop illegal drug activity? Well, I can tell you that one of the answers is to confiscate the money and drugs that fuels it. So, if you're ready, join me as I take you around the world and tell you about some of the biggest seizures of cash. 1.5 million, BALDWIN, Alabama. So we began our cash seizure journey right here in the good old USA. So, what's the easiest method of wiggling your way out of a bag drug bust? Well, one truck driver thought the best way to do that was simply to just play dumb. Now, imagine you're a state trooper in BALDWIN, Alabama, performing a routine truck inspection along I-65 like any other ordinary day. Now, the truck driver gives you permission to search your truck, but once you check out the cab, you see 4 suspicious-looking bags, and upon further inspection, inside these mysterious bags, you discover $1.5 million in cash. Now, why would a truck driver be carrying all of this money, and why on earth would he allow a state trooper to search his truck, knowing that he had enough money to support a local pharmacy? So, when the state trooper asked the truck driver what it was all about, he simply shrugged his shoulders and said he had no idea how it got there. Now, needless to say, he was immediately taken into custody. Now, not only did this story make the news, but it also made the news as the biggest drug cash seizure in the state of Alabama. $5.7 million, Australia. If you want to run a huge drug operation, then you might want to come up with a foolproof plan first. In 2013, the Australian Crime Commission caught wind of a money laundering scheme. They then joined forces with the Australian Transaction Reports and Analysis Center, as well as both the federal and state police, to target individuals during their year-long investigation. Now, they were able to target 128 previously unknown persons and dissolve 18 popular syndicated crime organizations throughout their investigation. They would end up seizing large sums of cash, but perhaps their largest netted $5.7 million was in one fell swoop, and that would bring their total to over $580 million in drug, money, and property. Now, the Australian Crime Commission claimed that they had used insights utilized by the United States DEA in order to create multiple sting operations. So it would be these operations that made them not only arrest more than 100 criminals, but it also successfully shut down 3 major meth labs, as well as a large marijuana plantation in Port Botany in Sydney, Australia. So, if you ever consider running away to the cartel in hopes of a lavish lifestyle, just remember, you probably won't make it out unscathed, because even the professionals get caught. $9 million, Baltimore, Maryland. If you're ever down and out, or maybe you just have a low spot in your life, keep in mind that at least you and your friends weren't caught with $9 million worth of heroin. Police would open an investigation on a 53-year-old man by the name of Perry Brown in 2015 when they became suspicious that he might be involved in illegal drug activity. So they tracked and monitored his cell phone for anything that looked even remotely fishy. So one day something caught their eye, and that's when they used a GPS tracker to locate the man. Now, when they caught up with him, police watched him at a truck stop where he was seen chatting with a 34-year-old man by the name of Juan Overa Morales and 41-year-old Alfredo Manuel Nevadas. Now, after several minutes, police discovered that he wasn't just chatting up with old friends. In fact, they watched the men unload multiple bags of drugs from a truck only to put them inside of a van. Now, shortly afterwards, police pulled him over on I-95, and the K-9 unit confirmed that there were, in fact, drugs inside the vehicle. However, they were not exactly expecting the sheer amount that they found. As it turns out, they uncovered 90 pounds of heroin wrapped in saran wrap and tape, which equaled to over $9 million, making it one of the biggest drug busts that Baltimore has ever seen. $24 million, Miami, Florida. Did you know that a 5-gallon Home Depot bucket is a great way to store and transport your dirty drug money? No? Well, neither did I until this story broke. Now, in June of 2006, Miami-Dade police would bust a marijuana drug lord and then discover $24 million that was stuffed into orange buckets adorned with the popular Home Depot improvement store logo. Now, I'm sure that's not exactly the kind of publicity that they were seeking. Nonetheless, 44-year-old Luis Hernandez Gonzalez was taken into custody. As it turns out, that the man also owned and ran a seamlessly legitimate business that catered to indoor gardening. Now, police do suspect that his biggest customers were in fact marijuana enthusiasts and producers. So that meant that he was only aiding in the growing of the marijuana in Miami. However, some would argue that his business was legitimate, but there is no denying his side hustle would include doling out advice on how to care for and revive sick marijuana plants, and that the side hustle was truly illegal. Now, if he truly had nothing to hide, he probably wouldn't have been storing his extra cash inside the walls of his house or ironically guarding it in a St. Lazarus statuette. In the end, the bust turned out to be the biggest cash seizure that the Miami-Dade police had ever experienced. $205 million, Mexico City, Mexico. To have and keep around this kind of money successfully takes both skill and a multi-party operation. Unfortunately, the drug traffickers involved, they clearly didn't have the skills to keep it all under wraps. So police would become suspicious when in 2006, 19 tons of pseudoephedrine showed up in Mexico. And for those who don't know, pseudoephedrine is a popular cold medicine that happens to be one of the most important ingredients in meth. And in the United States, the drug is highly regulated and can only be purchased in very tiny quantities. Now, the company that ordered the drug would be flagged, and then they would begin searching for those who were involved. So when police would seize over $200 million from the makers of the meth in Mexico City in 2007, they then uncovered a massive drug trade operation that extended from Mexico and the US to parts of Asia. However, because they didn't find any drugs, they simply assumed that the location was where they stored their cash. Now, I guess the takeaway here is that 80% of meth in the United States is made in Mexico. So, if you do drugs and only support business from the United States, you're gonna have to make your own purchasing, one box of Sudafed at a time. $309 million, Australia. In 2009, police would confiscate over 15 million ecstasy pills. Those pills were worth over $300 million. The Australian federal government began to investigate in 2007, and over the course of a year, many of the drug handlers, inside ringleaders, transporters, and even dock workers would be taken into custody. However, it wouldn't be until about a year later that they uncovered a massive drug stash in Melbourne. The 15 million pills were conveniently packed inside of 3,000 tomato cans that were imported from Italy. So the next time you go to make some delicious pots of spaghetti sauce with fancy, authentic Italian canned tomatoes, you may just want to sift through it to make sure that you don't see any tiny white pills, because dinner would end up being a whole lot different. Millions seized in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. Edmonton police would arrest 12 drug traffickers in March of 2014 after 6 connected drug busts, and it would just so happen to make the news as being the largest seizure of cash in the city to date. In the largest of those 6 raids, police would confiscate $800,000, but all of the money wasn't dirty, according to the police. A good majority of the money would be given to victims of the drug dealers' crimes. 2.6 million, Vancouver Island, Canada. In 2012, near a Vancouver Island harbor, a man would be arrested after suspiciously dumping a suitcase from his boat after noticing police officers were nearby. Now, following several attempts to snag the waterlogged suitcase, police recovered it and soon realized exactly why the man had dumped it overboard, because it contained nearly $2.6 million and that resulted in one of the largest seizures of money in Canadian history. $50 million Colombia. In 2007, Colombian police began a series of raids after hearing about some illegal activity from the DEA. Now, during the first raid alone, they would confiscate $13 million that they found inside of a cabinet decoy. By the end of the raids, they would have seized over $50 million, which made the headlines as being one of the largest amounts of cash that was ever seized by police. $525 million, Australia. Australia police opened an investigation when they heard about some illegal activity from the DEA. Now, it wasn't your average drug operation, however. The syndicate was comprised of a variety of gang members, human traffickers, terrorists, and drug cartels. So, during the lengthy and tedious investigation that took over a year, that's when they would raid a warehouse in Sydney, Australia, and found something that might actually shock you. They uncovered a whopping 306 kilograms of crystal meth and over 250 kilograms of heroin. So, for those of you who don't know much about drugs, that equates to $525 million, all of which was carefully packaged and placed inside 100 terracotta pots. So, during the drug bust, 7 traffickers would be arrested, 4 of those being Australian residents and 3 of them being Chinese. So, this scandal would be known as the largest meth haul and 3rd largest heroin bust in Australian history, and according to local police, the raid would prevent these drugs from hitting the streets of Australia and the United States, thanks to the help of the Australian police, because they dissolved one of the biggest drug syndicates in Victoria.